Hello and welcome to the Redefining High Performance podcast. My name is Ty Bennett. I'm excited to be with you today because in today's episode, we're going to talk about something that I think holds all of us back. I think as human beings, we have this barrier that we have to deal with, and it shows up in different ways and at different times and stronger in certain areas. But let me bring this to life with a story. So many of you know I'm a big basketball fan. I want to talk to you a little bit about Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain is one of the greatest basketball players of all time. He played a long time ago, so not as many people know his stats, his story, who he was. But Wilt was 7'1", and for 14 seasons, he dominated professional basketball. He was a force. He was really hard to stop, especially at that time in the game. The only downfall or the only weakness in his game was his free throw percentage. He couldn't make free throws. In fact, through his whole career, he shot 51% from the free throw line, and there were seasons that were as low as 38%. It was abysmal. He was not a good free throw shooter, and so if you were an opposing coach, that weakness presented an opportunity. The main strategy was to foul Wilt and put him on the free throw line because he couldn't make his free throws. Otherwise, he would be too dominant inside and dunk on you or score at will. And so he was fouled quite often. Well, right before the season of 1962, Wilt was persuaded by a teammate, Rick Barry, to try and shoot free throws underhanded. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody shoot free throws underhanded. Sometimes it's called a granny shot, but Rick Barry is one of the greatest free throw shooters of all time, and he shot underhanded. Well, Wilt decided to try it. Why not? He couldn't shoot overhanded. He was really bad at it, and so he decided to go with this new approach, and it actually worked. In the season of 1962, Wilt Chamberlain shooting underhanded eclipsed 60% on free throw percentage for the very first time. And in Wilt's greatest game, which was on March 2nd, 1962, Wilt scored 100 points. That's the most points ever scored in a professional basketball game. Unbelievable when you think about 100 points. Sometimes teams only score 100 points. But what most people don't know about that game is that 28 of those 100 points came at the free throw line. In fact, in that game, Wilt shot 32 free throws and he made 28 of them. That's 87%. And yes, he was shooting them underhanded. He actually fixed his problem. It worked. And then after that season of 1962, guess what Wilt did? Wilt decided to go back to shooting free throws the normal way, and his free throw percentage went right back down the toilet. Why would he do that? Why would he go from this change that was working, it actually fixed his problem. It made him better at what he does. Why would he do that? Well, in his autobiography, he actually wrote that shooting free throws underhanded made him feel like a sissy. Meaning his ego couldn't handle it. Seriously, this was his profession. He was at the top of his profession. He was trying to be the best basketball player in the world, and his ego wouldn't let him change form because he worried about how other people saw it. He thought people would make fun of him. The greatest basketball player of his time, his ego got in the way. Friends, I don't think we're that different than Wilt Chamberlain. And I try and remind myself a lot, because I deal with this just the way everybody else does, is your ego is not your amigo. Your ego stops you. It makes you make stupid decisions. It gets in the way. It keeps you from putting yourself out there. Here's why I bring this up. When we looked at barriers to high performance, there were several, but two of them, which were at the top of the list, were number one, fear of failure, and number two, taking criticism personally. I think both of those are because of your ego. If you struggle with the fear of failure, what is that typically? It's typically because we worry about how we're perceived, how other people see us. We don't want to come across as failures. We don't want other people to laugh. We don't want other people to see us fail. We want to be strong. We want to get the job done. We want people to think that we're invincible. And guess what? We're human, and that's okay. But our ego stops us from putting ourselves out there because we are worried about how people are going to respond. Our ego stops us from trying new things because we're worried about looking dumb. When people give us feedback, it's not when we take that personally, when it feels like criticism, when it hurts, when our defenses go up, that's our ego, right? That shows up, and it's there to protect us, but it also stops us from learning. It stops us from growth. Your ego is one of the biggest barriers to high performance. So how do we set that aside? What do we do? Well, it's hard, right? We're human, and it's going to show up. And that's why I said this is something I think we constantly are managing. We're constantly trying to work on. We're constantly trying to grow. I think you can learn how to do this. I think we have to practice humility. Humility, the word humility comes from the root word humus, which is that dark, rich soil, which is fertile for growth. Humility isn't about like self-deprecation. It's not putting yourself down. Humility is about growth. Humility is about continuing to learn, continuing to seek feedback, continuing to look for opportunities to grow in different areas of your life. We've talked in previous podcasts about, I believe that all of us as leaders, that we need to make a to learn list, that we need to keep growing and adapting, that if we want to lead in today's world, our rate of learning has to keep pace with the rate of change. And we live in a world that's changing constantly. So I do think we can do that. I think we can ask people for feedback. When we proactively reach out and ask people for feedback, it's a tool that's going to cause us to have to receive that feedback on a consistent basis. Now, that doesn't mean that some of it won't hit our ego, but we can build that muscle because we're asking for feedback on a regular basis. Then when we get maybe unsolicited feedback, we're a little bit more used to it, right? Where we can hear it without getting so hurt by what's told to us or what the feedback that we're receiving. This week, the challenge is to work on managing your ego and to recognize where it comes up, to recognize why we respond in certain ways. Why are we defensive? Why are we justifying? Why are we holding back? Why are we avoiding failure? I think our ego is going to show up on a regular basis. And if we become cognizant, if we become aware of it, that's the first step to be able to say, oh, okay, it shows up there. What do I do with that? And let's work on building the muscle to keep that ego at bay. I think there's a great lesson from Wilt Chamberlain. It's crazy to me that somebody who could have been maybe the best in the world limited himself because he didn't want to look dumb. I just don't think that that's different than any of the rest of us. And that's why I think it's such a poignant story and a poignant lesson for each of us as we pursue higher levels of performance in our life. Thank you so much for being with me today. This quick lesson hopefully sticks with you. It's a story that I think is powerful. Share it with somebody. Pass this episode on to somebody else this week, and let's learn together. Let's continue to grow together. Thank you for joining, again, the Redefining High Performance podcast, and I will talk to you soon.